right, here we are on the Hallows Podcast with some of my favorite people here in Flagstaff, Wayne McCormick and Terri Clark. Thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Very welcome.
One of Flagstaff's real estate dream teams. Yeah, so we're just jiving in about market a little bit, and I think here we are at the end of the year, and it's been a wild year. And I guess very, very personally, I mean, a lot of people have been listening to the news and trying to keep up with it. What has been the weirdest when it comes to real estate? What's been the weirdest thing that you've had to deal with right now?
I think it's the tempo. Tempo's been very sporadic.
Yeah.
You know, things kind of roll, and then things kind of cool down a little bit, and then it picks up a little bit, and, you know, the tempo's definitely been up and down.
I think the weirdest thing for me has been coming off of the last 2 years, 3 years, what you call the unicorn years.
Yeah.
Coming off of that into this market has it's really been different.
Yeah. And the lack of predictability has been really, really weird. And what did you say with the tempo piece? We can, fairly comfortably understand going from 2% rates to 8% rates is what a lot of what you're talking about there, Terri, right? Is just that shift and how that dynamic has shifted market. So rates are, and I'd say possibly some client exhaustion impact as well, right? If people kind of got tired of the bidding wars and the fast pace as well, and so that on top of rates. But would you say the tempo piece is primarily rates as well? As those are kind of yo-yoed up and down?
Definitely, and I think the swing of confidence, buyer confidence, kind of waning through the year a little bit, and then coming a little bit more positive. But there hasn't been enough of the economic variables to really push it, to really build up buyer confidence, to really want to step into the market full force. It's been like gradual steps towards the market, but not really making a commitment. Like, I'm looking, I'm browsing, but they're waiting. They think that this market has a bubble to it. And where's the adjustment in the housing market where I'm going to be ready, but when's that housing bubble going to happen, which it's not going to.
I see, Terri, if you're just listening, Terry's nodding her head over here like, not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you seeing then from your standpoint in data, and and specifically to Flagstaff as well, that's not going to happen?
It's the limited supply will be a continuing problem. Housing affordability, unfortunately, is going to stay stubbornly high. We're not going to see a big correction in the affordability window, which is unfortunate. But the limited supply is going to be chronic in the market into next year. And that's going to be there for a while, just because the sellers are going to be not making any drastic moves, kind of clinching up a little bit like they did for us in the third and fourth quarter of this year. We really felt the sellers clinching up and not really making any moves unless they have to make a move out of the area.
Within that, though, we've had, what did I just see then? Is year to date, historically speaking, we'd have something like 12, and don't quote me on this, some realtor looking on Flex is going to challenge me on this, but it was like last year to date was something like 1,200 homes or 1,100 homes, and we're like 800-ish right now.
Right.
Which doesn't, on one end doesn't seem massive, but when that's like, a 25% reduction in sales, that's significant.
Yeah.
Right. And so how much is inventory still a culprit on that end here in Flagstaff?
Terri can comment more about that, because the buyer frustration is there in the market right now because there's not much supply to look at.
Yeah.
And they're getting frustrated by, there's nothing to look at. I don't agree with these prices. So they're kind of like taking a back step with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't help but have a good laugh on this one, because I'm thinking of, there's such limited choices, and the one choice that one of your clients had happened to be, you've seen Step Brothers, right? It happened to be in an unfortunate situation, like the neighbor is, for those of you who've seen Step Brothers and see them like dressing up to try and make it so their brother can't sell a home. Like you had some crazy person trying, like, it's just like, there's not choice. And that person's looking for a home that you're showing it to is still looking because either the home doesn't exist or there's crazies next door.
Certifiable crazies. Don't park. You can't park
crazies
here.
Is not a protected class, by the way. If you're just crazy, I don't care what. It's just, oh man.
Well, and I had to call that agent and just say, so we just got in the front door and left and she goes, I don't know what I'm going to do with that neighbor.
Yeah.
Don't know.
So it's tough. So are we seeing, there's a little bit more inventory on right now than the first of the year.
Mm-hmm. Right? Just a little bit. But just a little bit. You know, the listing inventory adjustment, it'll get a little bit more positive for us in the first half of next year, but it's not going to be a big spike. I don't anticipate a big spike, and prices will kind of stay a little stubborn. We're going to see a split market going on. We talked about this at our Realty Exec sales meeting on Tuesday, is the split market. Some subdivisions will have a little bit of tempo to it that's consistent, and other subdivisions will be very quiet. It's going to be a real pick and choose housing market, and not surprising, we'll have some sellers in some subdivisions that won't get any showings, and 2 blocks away, the seller's getting a lot of showings. We're going to see a real split market.
And I know it's hard, and I love that you brought that up because I think that's been fascinating to watch. It's been weird, right? Like you said, that's been one of the weirdest things that I've seen is like all of a sudden I have someone calling me saying, we got bid out,
right? And
then I have the other person saying, hey, we got $20,000 worth of concessions and a $5,000 price reduction or something. It's like these don't. How is this in the same market? So as far as I know, we can't fully predict, but what are the demand? It's supply and demand, right? And so what are the demand pieces that you're seeing that, people can say, hey, this neighborhood, has good tempo, or because of its, location or desirability or ability to do short-term rentals, or what are we seeing? Is there any commonality that we can say that's what drives tempo right now?
Sellers are going to have to work hard in this market right now. It's not going to be just price. Sellers are going to have to work hard. We're going to have to go back to where it's a leaner market condition type of mentality. Okay. And sellers are going to have to work a little bit harder in this market, not just on price, but a lot of things to get ready for the market, because you can't just throw
your house on the market and get it sold anymore. Yeah. You have to work at it. You need to clean it up. You need to paint it. You need to be market ready when you hit the market, because like you say, there's other people that are willing to wheel and deal and give you some concessions, and you gotta put yourself in the right frame to be seen, to get out there.
I like it. That's very tactical advice on that front. As far as, would you say there's any hot neighborhoods in Flagstaff or hot price points?
Well, I mean, it's going to be the same core ones: Ponderosa Trails, University Heights, Country Club, pocket areas in some of the older subdivisions, Coquino Estates, Cheshire, jump it over to the base of Mount Eldon. So, I mean, there's some pocket areas that will still have some good, activity. But right now, some of the newer subdivisions may be commanding a little bit more buyer traffic, because the buyers may say, I'm in the driver's seat. I'm not looking at a house that's 20 years old. I want to look at houses that are 10 years old or newer. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm in the driver's seat. They're going to exhaust all their possibilities with those sellers. They can't get what they're looking for. Then they may shift out into some of the older subdivisions. So, it's going to be a tough challenge for the buyer's agents. It won't just be, hey, let's look at all these houses in this price point. This agent's going to have to be resourceful, because they're going to be picking and choosing a lot more with these market conditions for a while.
And as best as you can say just anecdotally from your last year, who is buying? Are these first-time home buyers, second home buyers, investors? Do you have kind of a mix of it all? What are you guys dealing with primarily?
We didn't really have many investors. We had a few first-time home buyers, which is shocking, and then people that are relocating to the area. We talked before. I think I talked with you about it. My move-up buyers have been non-existent this year.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to get rid of that interest rate. So move ups, and I think that's affected the supply,
For sure.
Nobody's playing chess. Nobody's moving. Everybody's just setting.
And from a standpoint, and I do think, we can talk about that more, but I think that will be a big factor on both ends that we'll see as we head. And as we head into a lower rate environment, which we don't know exactly, we've already seen a big reduction from the peak rates in this last October. But as we head into a lower interest rate environment, I do think we'll see relief on both ends with that move up buyer, right? We'll see more inventory available. We'll see more buyer activity in action. So be interesting to see how that plays out, because it'll both help and hurt, right? Because there's more demand in the market,
right.
Hopefully more inventory. From the seller standpoint though, all right, so if we're not seeing move up buyer from your listing standpoint, are those just folks that are, getting out of Dodge and moving town primarily?
Well, and I want to say too, we're talking about move up buyers. It's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, there isn't that big rush to move up, but at the same time, this would probably be one of the best times for them, because when rates drop and they want to move up, then the supply is going to be, you're going to be back into, I hope we don't get into bidding wars, but you're not going to get those concessions or be able to negotiate as well as you can right now. Yeah. So it is, people don't want to move, but when they do want to move, it's going to be tough again.
And it's been an interesting market, because like 600 to a mil has been really sluggish. Not a lot of movement in there, right?
That's
but
that
then a million,
buyer kind of range.
Then a million to 3 turnkey products gone.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean, we've seen, and I'm not talking just golf course gated communities. I'm talking county properties where, 1.5, 2 million. We're seeing them. They're turnkey, great location, and they're going off the shelf at a pretty good timely pace. So it's like below 600. Some pretty good movement there, but 600 to a mil, that's our real sluggish,
just
kind of
stagnant,
trudging through. You got a turnkey house, great location, nice upgrades. You can get some more attention, but the 600 to a mil is really a tough market right now to move some inventory.
I don't. My immediate mind, as we just kind of speculate on it, is that mil plus. Is that more of that opportunistic, second home buyer, investor?
I think we've seen them. They're more lifestyle people, aren't they?
Right.
I mean, they saw the right product and they've been thinking about it, and they just ready to go because it's what they wanted. These interest rates aren't affecting them.
Interest rates and inflation, right? Because if it's that lifestyle buyer, it's like, okay, we've talked about this before, right? Of like, all right, your grocery bill is going up like 10-20% or something, and that middle class buyer in Flagstaff that really is in that move up market of 600 to a million is that middle class buyer,
right.
And that impacts them a little bit more, right? Versus their lifestyle buyer, it's like, okay, they're gonna have to cancel maybe one of their Cancun trips, but they'll still be able to buy the house. So I wonder if it's just very, very budget and inflation heavy right now. Do you have a lot of people talking about the stress of the economics right now to you guys, or not necessarily? You hear a lot of buyers economically concerned, and
I listen to my kids all the time.
Yeah,
they're economically concerned.
Absolutely.
Everyone that knows me knows I've got 3 teachers in Flagstaff in my family, and 10%, 15% on your grocery bill, it affects what they can and can't do.
Yeah,
everybody's working.
Oh yeah,
it's rough.
I was out with this youth group, and we were going through the Dairy Queen. And I was ordering 6 dipped cones. 6 just like dipped cones. And I'm thinking it's like 50 cents a cone or something. And she just says like, oh, this is like $35 at the window. And I start pulling up, and I was like, wait, $35 at the window? And then one of the 14-year-olds in the back says, yeah, it's like $4 a cone. And so I'm like, what? How did we go from 50 cents to $4? And so, I think, those realizations, it's on a lot of people's minds right now too. So I think that's part of.
I think that, and that's why the 600,000 to the mill is
right. It's tough
because
market.
That's where a lot of the residents of Flagstaff can want to buy in, but when the grocery bill's up, utility bills are up, everything's up,
car prices right now,
and their budget's being strained. I think you see they don't want to talk buying another house. Yeah. They're just trying to buckle in to see if they can get a little bit better, or do they have a wage increase, or
to see if they can stay in Flagstaff.
Yeah, I mean they're looking to see if there's potential to get a wage increase, a salary increase, or better career opportunities here. And I think if those aren't all clicking for them, then they're not expressing interest in the housing market. They may be expressing interest in other housing markets outside the Flagstaff area because they're just like, we're maxed out. We can't live in this community comfortably. And, we get a lot of these stories firsthand too because of our support with Habitat. And the Habitat dedications, we meet the recipients. We understand there's 600 applications to get a Habitat house. It's appalling what these people are struggling with on daily expenses to try to live in Flagstaff. And then when you go down to that level, and the affordable housing, and Realty Executives has been a strong sponsor of Habitat for a long time, and we're at every ceremony and dedication and meeting these families. It's a struggle to live in this community.
Was it 600? I thought it was over 600 applicants for that first home that they did there.
Yeah, it's like 620.
It was wild.
Something. It was crazy.
And that's so comparing numbers out here, right? There's over 600 applicants for for this specific. And if you guys, we actually had Eric Wolverton on the podcast last year, talked about that project in Butler. So anyone listening, rewind into, I think it was the fall last year, almost a year ago, maybe the spring, that we had him on talking about that really neat project that they've done where it's really that move up. The idea is helping someone build a down payment, get into the housing market. So super, super cool. But they've done one house here in Butler. They're doing it second, right?
Yeah, it's done.
Is it done?
Uh-huh.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so, but you have 600 people applying for it. You have 800 homes that have sold in Flagstaff. I mean, these numbers are staggering of the number of people that need and want affordable housing. Mm-hmm. I know the city's got their mandate and everything, and it's just,
We're getting ready. How many are they doing out at Timberline?
40.
Yeah.
They're going to do 40 out there.
Habitat will be doing 40?
40 in the Timber Sky.
Sky.
Yeah. The Vintage Development Company was so gracious to dedicate land for Habitat. Wow. And they're going to build out there in the Timber Sky project off of Woody Mountain Road.
40 of them.
And just, it was great. The city followed the lead and was very cooperative to, make this all work, because we could have had more green belt, but that's not addressing. And Mr. and the Vintage Development Company came through and dedicated the land to Habitat. So now they have land, and Westpac Construction has been gracious to help set up the foundation, stem wall, and do all the dirt work, all the hookups. Yeah. And then Coconino Community College builds the units.
With the owners, swinging hammers.
And then they transport them out. And these tiny homes are the way to go. And it's been a great program for CCC, and it's expanding their construction management program. And so, it's moving a lot of cogs in the community. So we're really proud to be part of that. Yeah. But when you get exposed to that, you're like, this is a tough community to live in.
Oh, yeah.
And to raise a family in. And you can kind of feel the strain. So you just kind of feel really gracious when you can work with hardworking families that want to stay committed to home ownership in Flagstaff. And that'll be the interesting turning key next year, is how many of those families want to step into home ownership or do a move up buy or make a change, or are they going to stay in stalemate mode on us like they did in the third and fourth quarter of this year?
I think it's not just Flagstaff where it's tough to live. I mean, you look at everywhere. My little hometown in Kentucky, everything has gone through the roof. Yeah. So it's not just Flagstaff who's struggling. It's pretty much everywhere unless you go somewhere really rural.
We first came to Flagstaff in 2009, my wife and I, and I remember she's from Mesa, and when we bought our first home in 2010, I remember like her kind of like, wow, we could get an extra like 800 square foot in a pool and a yard because we bought a little townhome, and we could have a single family detached home plus more square footage plus a pool. But even that difference has tightened up. That's interesting too, right? I wish I had a stat on it to say like the valley has gotten a lot closer than it ever has to Flagstaff.
Our prices, right?
Like it seems like, and this is purely anecdotal, but it seems like it was almost half sometimes. Like, right? You could get something for half in different locations, and now it's like, well, maybe it's a 20% reduction, 30% reduction, but it's not 50 anymore.
Right. And I mean, in the townhouse market was really our entry level first-time buyer market. That's all they could really afford was townhouses. Now the townhouse prices have escalated so high, they can't even get into that market anymore. So now they're they're in condos or they're in manufactured homes more, and it's like they just feel like they're being robbed of what they think is affordable home ownership experience that they should have. They hear all the stories from everybody like, oh yeah, my first house was a townhouse. That's where I started out. And they're like, we can't afford a townhouse. We can afford a manufactured home. And so, there's some struggles for our first time home buyers in this market.
For sure.
Some are staying committed, and we're working with them, and we're finding some good opportunities for them, and they've been able to negotiate some great terms from the seller because the seller needs to sell. The seller has to move forward. So seller's like, what can I do to make this happen? So we've had some buyers that have gotten some great opportunities.
Yeah, 2024 is going to be a fantastic year in a lot of ways because I think the biggest thing is normalcy. When people see ups and downs and swings, and now that price is high, and now that there's maybe a little coming off, and what's normal, right? Is because we don't deal with markets normally, right? People walk into the grocery store and want eggs to be this price pretty consistently, a TV at Walmart to be X price pretty consistently, but when they see rates and home prices and all this shift, I think that plays into a lot of just, hey, let things settle out, let the chaos stop, and I think we'll be very much, especially with what we're seeing from the Fed and everything. I'm very optimistic on that we'll get to some normalcy. And I think that will lead into a lower rate environment, but it will be catching a falling knife because just like you're saying is right now we have seller motivation, but if we then see more buyer motivation pick up and already what's a fairly stiff market, it's not like you're getting houses 50% off. That's, I think, where a lot of people need to be talking to experts and sorting through this right now.
Well, I just, the buyers we have, they're staying committed, but with the resources we can provide to them, they can get additional information through you on the rates going down, how much more their purchasing power is increasing as these rates shift down. And that gives them some motivation to stay active in the market.
And I think that plays into, it's a tragedy that I see play out, unfortunately, a lot of times where I can have buyer A and buyer B, and both are equally qualified. Both are equally wanting, needing this for their goals, their family, their plans, and wanting to get into housing. But because of their choice of professionals and place of trust in those experts, because this is not something people learn in school or something that they do every day.
You certainly don't learn it in real estate school.
And you don't even learn it in real estate school. That, buyer A could be getting into a house this spring, made the timing right, worked it out right, you and I cannot time exact housing markets and rate markets and everything, but we can work within our best advice. And they could be moving in and settling in, having the best summer of their lives. Whereas buyer B could be, kicking tires still. And almost got it for months.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because the agent can prepare them right to be active in the market. The agent was like, okay, let's go look. Oh, don't have much. We'll keep looking, you know, and not really stating why some of these listings may have been good options just to poke around on to understand the neighborhoods maybe, you know, and they're just not engaged enough with the buyer to help them understand, well, that house didn't particularly work, but what about the subdivision? what about the area? Maybe gaining some insight to get them like, hey, thank you so much, because we have some buyers that we educate and they're like, that house didn't work, but man, I love this area,
Sure.
Hey, we get a new listing in here, man, let's go. They're ready to go.
There's
They're
curve.
charged up,
Yeah.
because now it's not just the house, but it's the area, it's the subdivision, the schools, there's all types of dynamics. But, Terry's been with them and exploring some options, and all of a sudden they're like, they get a smile on their face because they know they found the right area, but they just have to find the right house. So there's some motivation coming into the gleam of their eyes where, if you didn't have some of this information being shared with them and giving them some good resource of information to ponder and contemplate, then, they could just be, kind of like, okay, I'm just going to focus on the house, and they're not really engaged. They're more like, that didn't work, yes, no, and they get into a yes, no format. No, that house does work. Let's go look at it. No, I don't like it. Let's wait for the next house. And it just gets into this yes or no format, and you don't have any engagement of a buyer who really is motivated to really go forth.
Yeah.
You know what I think too? I was talking to a trainer at the gym the other day. She is paying $3,000 a month for a condo in rent. And they don't know what they can and can't do. I said, girl, why? Why are you not looking to buy something?
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that. I'm like, well, I can tell you.
Yeah.
It's just the fear, the unknown. No one knows how to go about buying a house. And I was at the eye doctor yesterday, and the little gal just got married, and I said, you have got to do something if you're going to stay in Flagstaff.
Absolutely.
You cannot wait. And she goes, well, what do you do? I said, yeah, here's my card. It's not as hard but people are just fearful of the whole process, the whole dynamic of it. But $3,000 a month for a condo, and she signed a 2-year lease. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I said, why would you do that? Rent has been going up 20% every time she has to renew her lease.
Ooh.
So she's like, it made money sense for me to sign a 2-year lease.
And you don't know what you don't know. But I say this all the time here on the podcast, is talk to experts. There's people that are ready and willing to talk to you that have been around the block a lot of times. And that's where I think if we got really pointed, and I'm curious to see your guys' perspective on this, of like, what are the top 3 things that make a real estate professional, and honestly, the 1%. We want to be working with, you can be working with any one of the 600 plus agents in Flagstaff, of which, I'm going to say this just off the cuff, then 80% of them have sold less than one home a month. Yeah. Right. Or maybe even
one a year.
One a year.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. There's probably about 400 of them that only sell one house a year.
Yeah. And so to say awesome that, a lot of people choose relationally. And I think that can benefit sometimes, right? If they know you, but is that person have the full package? You mentioned one of the things I think is really, really key on my side of things is someone that creates opportunity, not waits for opportunity. Right. Someone that's willing to say, hey, let me help understand your situation, and I'm going to teach you some things and help you understand some things so we can create a brand new opportunity and a way to see your housing and life that could be hugely impactful, instead of we're going to wait for you to come to us and wait for you to tell us what you want and wait for you to point out which home, right? Those agents are not successful in this market. It's been very much make your own luck and make your luck for your buyer market. What would you guys say are then the top 2 to 3 other things that people should be looking at, asking, looking for in their real estate professional, or asking about the real estate professional to know if they're on the right bus for next year?
I think we have a good number of buyers that we get into you as quick as possible because they have bad budgeting. They're not looking at the down payment that they need to have for the purchase, and getting that done in the early stages cleaning up some bad credit items, open credit lines, and they just don't know. Yeah. And they don't realize how much time it takes. And then some of them have income tax extensions for 5 years, which you can't use, you know? And you're like...
Those are your buyers.
So, you know, it's just a matter of, you know, once they're in with you, then, you know, there's 6 months right there sometimes of just tidying up the financials, getting them ready. How can we improve their credit scores? And I mean, there's some high-paying professionals we work with, and they make, you know, 6 digits plus, but their credit sucks, you know? And we've had a couple of those buyers in the past, and you literally had to work with them on their credit for a full year to get their credit up in order to buy. Yeah, they're making $250,000 a year, $200,000 a year. There's no problem there, but their credit's not in good shape. So, you know, you've spent, you know, we had one a while back, you spent, I think, almost a year and a half getting their credit up to where they could have a mortgage, you know, and they just didn't, you know, they got through and made their obligations, but they weren't very good on their bookkeeping and, you know, getting that going. So, and I think the other time too is when they see the higher interest rates at 7.5 or 7.75, and now we can come in and tell them, hey, interest rates are 7.2. Chris is going to give you an email update. That gives them encouragement that they're starting to have some purchasing power back because they've been, you know, there for a while. But it's taking a little bit longer to get these buyers ready to go because they want to buy, but they have some pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that needs to get put into place better so they can be a more qualified buyer in the market. And I think that's going to be more the buyer base we're working with is the buyers who got pushed out of the market, buyers who maybe were just told, no, you know, you're not in good shape to buy a house. Yeah. And they got some rejection pretty quick by not the best resources to go to, just remotivating them to step back in because they really do want to buy. But something happened in the past that demotivated them. So I think we're going to have more of those buyers coming into the market this year because they're going to start to hear, hey, it's a buyer's market. Now I might have a chance. And now we got to take them with that marginal positive enthusiasm and we got to recharge them up a little bit to get them more motivated, and then they're going to be an active buyer. So it's going to be a little bit more work with the buyer base this coming year too. I don't think we're going to have all these buyers with the perfect credit, large down payments rolling in the door. We're going to have the ones with the 3.5%, 5% down, maybe at the most. We're going to be dealing with more of those buyers.
Well, I think, and I couldn't agree with what you said more there, especially in the sense of the times have changed, right? No one's got the button on this. No one's got the switch. We don't see like, hey, we're going to snap our fingers and be back in 2015 market conditions with our rates and prices. Like things have changed. So I couldn't agree with you more in that the buyer today simply has to be better than the buyer 3-4 years ago, right? You're going to have to tighten up that budget a little bit more. You're going to have to be a little wiser on your discretionary spend, on your credit card budgeting, on what you're doing with your FICO. Because a lot of folks, you know, not that they necessarily had better downs before, but it's like they could afford more house with 3% down. You might need to save 5% to hit your budget goals, right? You're going to need a longer runway to hit your goals than just like, you know, talking with the spouse at night and you decide to buy a house and then you're under contract 24 hours. That's not going to be as easy, right? Most people are going to need, like you said, engage early, educate with the professionals and get that plan going. And maybe, you know, maybe you're only a 3-month plan, maybe you're only a 1-month plan, but could be a 6 to 12 month to really hit where you want to go. But let's get you on it.
Right. Yeah. So it's going to be work on both sides. Sellers going to have to work a little bit harder.
Yep.
We're going to have to work a little bit harder on our side to get our buyers engaged and get them more pre-qualified and more solid as buyers. And so both sides of the stick are going to have to work a little bit, you know, a little bit more diligent in 2024 to make things happen.
Yeah. No, what are your thoughts there? What makes a great agent different than a good?
Well, I can just speak for ourselves. You know, my big thing in this town, and I was telling Wayne, I got snappy with an agent during the thick of the craziness with all these multiple offers. So out of character for me. And I have dwelled on it for 2 years. And I just finally apologized to her. And she was just laughing. She goes, oh my gosh, I got over that. But you gotta have those relationships. I think if your agent doesn't know their lender, doesn't know their title, doesn't know the other agents are dealing with, it's a unique area up here. I mean, I would say I know 90% of everybody I work with. So just having an agent that has a good base and has been kind to most everybody except that one time that one time I snapped back and I still fell for it. I think that's very important. Just someone that's connected in the community, not someone that just drove up from the valley to show you a house. Our whole business, I feel, is built on relationships. And I know it's hard to believe that our feelings ever get hurt, but I've called him crying more than once. Oh, no. And he has never called me crying, but he has called me and said, can you believe? I mean, we put so much into our clients as far as they're trusting us with their financial, what we know about their financials, what we know about their families. I mean, it is a real commitment. And I think that's what sets us apart, is just the repeat people that keep coming back. Wayne goes far deeper than I do because his dad's been around forever. But yeah, just having a human connection with everybody in the community, I think that's a plus for me.
Yeah.
We have great co-brokes with a good core agent base in the MLS. I guess that's the way to put it.
Yeah.
And the core agent base are the producers. They're full-time. Their experience. They've had the proper training. We have great co-brokes with them. The new agents that have no broker training, they're a struggle. But our objective is whoever we represent, buyer or seller, we got to make the deal happen.
Yeah.
And how many times Terry's had to train the other agent to get their job duties done so we can make it happen. Yeah. And it's just that they stepped into the market thinking, oh, just get my license, it'll happen. And there's no training with their brokerage. They're out there running wild with a client. And it's really sad because there's a lot of times we see contracts and we have to tune them up a little bit. And we're like, oh my gosh, if we didn't spend this much time, if this buyer knew what a disaster case buyer agent they're working with, they'd be shocked. But we wanted to make the deal work because it was in our best interest for our client that we were representing. So, I think that pack of agents are going to fall out this year because they didn't do much this year. So we'll have some agent base falling out of the market. That'll trim our numbers down. But as we spoke in our sales meeting on Tuesday, we're anticipating a glut of Phoenix agents coming up here trying to put a deal together because they can't get the business going in Phoenix. The Phoenix market's going to be lean this year. And, hey, you're going to Flag? You want to buy a second home? I'm going with you. And they're going to be jumping in the car. And we're going to have to be, as an agent base, we're going to have to be more disciplined to control them. Because they're going to come in stronger this year. We had more this past year than we've had to work with. They were listing properties up here, had no clue what they were doing. Because they're trying to grab any listing they can because they didn't have any listing base down in the valley. It was tough working with them because they're like, we just closed one just recently, and she's quoting us labor prices for painters out of Phoenix. This is Flagstaff. Yeah. She's quoting us floor covering install rates from Phoenix. We're like, this is Flagstaff. Yeah. And the house was a disaster. And it was just like, she was always fighting with us based on what she knew about Phoenix. Like, this is Flagstaff. It's a totally different market. And for some reason, and she did a disastrous job for her seller, but we had the buyer and we had to make it work. And we got some great concessions out of the seller and her, but it's like they're going to be scrambling. And so the local agent base is going to have to be very disciplined of how to control these Phoenix agents and not get mowed over because they're coming in aggressive, and we dealt with some aggressive ones this year, and we're like, we don't cooperate that way. We had to put them into position, and they're just like, unlock the door and I'm in. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. We got to validate who you are, why you're here, and all this. And like, why are we doing this? I have a buyer, and they think we should just be racing out there to unlock the doors for them. And it doesn't work that way. So our agent base here is going to have to control this Phoenix agent base, because they're not getting the listings down in Phoenix. They're scrambling for business, and they're going anywhere they can now. And we really have prepped our agents at our office to be ready to get them under control, because they're going to be coming in strong in the spring and the early summer, we anticipate.
Yeah. So if they can't spell cistern, or they can't tell you what a private road maintenance agreement is, right? There's so many different things we could go into on like
SISTERIN.
And that's the thing, is like little things. You might think, oh, tomato, tomato. No, this is not this. A house is not a house is not a house. Flagstaff is not Phoenix.
Yeah.
The things we deal with that you might, and this is the craziest thing, that we've seen this play out horribly, right? When people get the wrong expertise and they're like, oh, it's just they minimize things, and they think everything's the same or everything's whatever. And you're like, no, some of these things are huge, and they come up from the valley, they sell them a home out in Belmont. They don't know that this particular street in Belmont is the cutoff for high speed internet, and the rest of it's low speed. And you work from home. Guess what? You're now trying to find office space in Flagstaff because you can't even get connected to the World Wide Web as fast as your employer needs you to, right? And that's like, miss that one, right? Yeah. It's just, if you're local, not that we dislike other people, like, we love all human beings, but no, Phoenix agents are not Flagstaff agents. You see those local stickers on bumpers for a reason, and that's a big one.
Yeah.
Right?
I would no sooner go to the valley and try to sell a house than...
Now you're going to manage pool situations.
Oh my God. I'm just like, what are you thinking?
Yeah. So just different locations for sure.
Yeah, and they think we're a member of Armless. And they're like, why isn't my super box not key working?
Yeah.
Like, we're in a different super box system. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, I thought you were part of Armless out of Phoenix. Like, no, we're not. It's just crazy, the questions we have to deal with. And the attitude with them is unbelievable. It's not like, Terri deals with it a little bit more on the front lines. But, man, there's some of them that are very nice. They're understanding they're stepping into a different market, and they want to work cooperatively. And there's some in there that just act like you're in Scottsdale, and we got to roll now, and,
Coming.
So, yeah.
Oh, too funny.
Yeah, I just had Vince clean for $200. I'm like, well, here's our bid. Here's our bid for painting. Just had to fight the whole way.
Yeah.
Bring your painters up here then. Party on. You can't do this. But
I love that reality check. Well, and it just, it's so important. It's a common theme. Is part of our relationship is working with experts makes all the difference, right? And isn't that like, I wasn't planning on setting up realty executives like that, but what's realty executives where the experts are, right?
Well, and the thing unique about us is we're not just doing, we're training every week.
Yeah.
I mean, we're having a meeting. We are learning something every week. I mean, there's a joke around the office every time we do something. I'm like, what does that have to do with real estate? But because you learn something new. Yeah. And some of these agents that just, they get their license and that's it. Yeah. And you gotta continue your education, your training. You've got to nurture the relationships you have.
Yeah.
And that's where we stand apart.
Yeah. Well, I think people got to interview, like, this is one of the biggest jobs they hired someone on to do, because this is one of the biggest investments of their life versus just like, oh, you look nice, or you drive a nice car. Like, well,
I did pick my first Flagstaff agent out of a magazine. And I told her, I just really like your picture. Now I'm like, oh my gosh. But anyway,
the 90s was so much simpler.
Exactly.
It worked out good.
I think we had 200 agents back in the early 90s,
She was a good agent.
She got lucky. She did pick a veteran, experienced agent that was trained by realty executives when she first started out, and then she left our office. But Yeah, you know, we're one of the oldest brokerages here in town, and you know, and over 100 some years of veteran experience in our office to guide our agents correctly on their transactions. And you know, our agents know hey, I hit a speed bump. How do I resolve this? You know, like yesterday, we have 2 agents that got a great deal going together, but they have a foundation issue, and they need to know, how do I steer this? You know, we got to get the foundation corrected, but the buyer's fine if the foundation's corrected. Seller's willing to pay for it but how we pull this together, you know? So you got to, you know, and they were there at the end of our sales meeting, like, we got a problem. How are we going to resolve this? And, you know, with the veteran agent base and the broker and, you know, Gary Nelson, our sidekick, delegated broker, it's always there. And
might I say, they never lose. Whoever they go up against on a dispute, if you have got the advice from Wayne and Gary, you can rest assured you're going to be okay if you got an issue.
So yeah, I mean, we're really proud. Our agents are very well trained, and what we bring in for resources to tap into, and you know, every deal gets a little different, and so you know, they realize, you know, no transaction repeats itself, and we always prepare them every Tuesday. And so, you know, we feel great. Our agents are happy, and another reason why we have a low turnover agent base at our office. We got a great thing going.
And the give back to the community. There's no other office in town that gives back. Literally, I don't even know who all we give to, but the list is
it's
this
on the back
long.
Of the postcard.
Yeah, it's huge.
I love it.
And just the sense of community. I mean, Deb and Wayne just feel big time about giving back, and we give and give and give.
I love it. Well, that's awesome, you guys. Well, no, it's if you're in the right hands, or if you're in Wayne and Terry's hands, you're going to have a great 2024. Yeah. It's going to be a good year for those that are invested and taking it seriously. And thanks for coming on the podcast, you guys.
You're welcome. Bye, Chris. Bye.